Start.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, hello everyone. So my name is Nico and I'm an associate trainee here at Auti Associates, and I've been dealing mostly with startups and company law. So I'm going to begin with giving you a small introduction, and after that I'll answer some of your pre-questions, and I might answer after that some follow-up questions, but let's keep it short and simple and see what happens. So the first thing is obviously to answer like what is actually a startup and what's the difference, for example, to a small company, or is there any difference? Well, legally speaking, no, there is no difference. At least there's no definition what is a startup. Where the difference comes from certain characteristics. So that is like usually startups, they aim for fast growth. So that's like getting more money faster than like normal businesses, but with higher risks as well. So that means that about 90% of startups usually fail. Startups are usually really young and they're really small. So usually you only have like few people working on them or a really small team, at least at the beginning. And I received questions like, is there usually only one line of business or many one? Well, the short answer is that usually startups only have like one business at least at the beginning, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't expand your business further, at least at some point. So next thing I'm going to talk is like, now that we covered the characteristics, so difference to small firms, just to summarize this, startups are actually smaller, the risks are really high, and unfortunately usually they fail. But if they succeed, the profits are much greater as well than in smaller businesses. So then we'll talk about, let's start talking about this new thing called a startup residence permit. So startup residence permit was actually introduced this year. And it means that you might get a residence permit based on getting a startup. So that means that there are some preconditions, and one of the conditions is that you actually need to have 2 people already within the company. So one person to get a startup permit is not possible. You also need to have some secure finances, so you need to have some money already in your bank account. It's basically the same as the income requirement when you apply for a study permit or family permit, so that you can provide yourself and you're not a burden for the society in that sense. You also need to have a business plan and an idea. And this is the challenging part. The business plan has to be something rather different than normal companies. So for example, if you want to open a restaurant, that might not be a sufficient startup. So it might have to be something more innovative, like an application or a barber shop that provides some other services as well in the side of the barber service. And the thing is that before you even apply for this startup permit, you need to first contact this organization called Business Finland. And through Business Finland, you provide your business plan. So you give a paper like, here is my business plan, is this okay? And then they review it and they either say, yes, it is, or it is not. And if it is, then you can apply for the Finnish immigration service. So unlike with other permits, first you have to apply elsewhere, not straight to Migri. And if the Business Finland gives you a yes, usually you get a positive decision. But usually this part, when you contact Business Finland, it's quite important that you have at least a consultant or a lawyer to help you to guarantee that the business plan is actually good and that you actually succeed. Because if Business Finland tells you this is not good, you cannot apply at all for the startup permit. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Well, obviously, let's move to investment. So is there anything that the government can help me to get money? Well, the answer to that is yes as well. So I mentioned that you need to contact Business Finland, and Business Finland also gives you investment if the idea is really good. It's called tempo financing. So it means that you need to have some funds already in your bank account, and the Business Finland will provide the rest. And the maximum amount of this investment that they pay you is 50,000 euros. But usually, in order for you to get that, you already need to have almost 30,000 euros in your bank account. But I'm highlighting you do not need to have this 30,000 euros to get the startup permit. It's just to get the financing. So there's a difference between those lines. If you are in a situation that you are actually already in Finland, you can apply for a startup grant. And startup grant is applied through TE office, so the employment office. And it's usually before you have established the business. So the amount is about 32 euros a day for a maximum time of 1 year max. And the conditions for you to get this is usually that you are already residing in Finland, you have a business plan, and the business is not fully active. So the purpose of the money is kind of like to help you to establish the business in the first place. And of course, when you have the business up and running, you can at later dates apply for separate funding through Business Finland or, for example, private investors like business angels. That is fairly common in that sense. I received a question like, is it possible to open a startup to different countries? Well, yes, it is. And if you already have a business in your own home country, you can apply to open a branch in Finland. But that requires obviously some specifics as well. For example, you need to have a representative in Finland to act on your behalf, and some other requirements as well. But that's slightly different to the question of having actual startup. And then I'll look at some of the questions that you have. So does the company need to be registered to be considered a startup? No, you can claim to have a startup already before it's in the trade register. So it is possible, and usually before you get the startup permit, you have not actually registered the company at that point. Usually you just provide your business idea that I would want to do this, I have the income for it, and now I would want to register it. And after that, they give you the go-ahead, like, okay, go ahead and establish the company. Then you go to the patent and registration office to establish it. And after that, Migri gives you the startup permit, and you are allowed to stay in Finland. And the good thing with startup permits is also that you can actually work elsewhere alongside it. But for that, the conditions is that the main purpose of the permit is still for you to work on your own startup. Okay, and how to protect a startup from a legal perspective. Well, the main reasons why startups usually fail, as I said, 90% of startups unfortunately fail. First is finances, lack of finance, as one would guess. And the number 2 reason is legal reasons. You usually make a mistake when registering the company. You might find difficulties with the tax authorities or with your actually fellow colleagues in the business. So for example, obviously all the paperwork at the beginning with the taxation and patent and registration office, but you need to also ensure that you have, for example, a shareholders agreements and paperwork like that, or IP protection, so that's intellectual property rights. For example, if you're making an application to make sure that you actually own the rights and you don't face any legal consequences in that sense. So especially before the company is set up, I would highly suggest hiring a lawyer, or at the very least a business consultant to help you through this. Do you provide consultation for people who have intention to establish a startup? We do, of course, and we're more than glad to help on that field, and we have done so. The most recent startup, well, what I worked was Baghdad Barbers. So it was actually a barber shop. We did it alongside with startup refugees. So there was 2 Iraqi persons who came to Finland, wanted to open a barber shop. So we helped them with consultation, with some paperwork, and with investors, and now they have actually been running for almost a year quite successfully here in Finland. Okay, well, that's pretty much the pre-questions, so an introduction. So now I can answer the follow-ups if you have some.
So I think you already answered from where I can get started to make my own company and find funding for the investors. So you already answered this one. Yes,
but I can just to summarize. Yeah. So there's many options. So when can you find the investors? You can find the state, obviously. So that's Business Finland, Ministry of Employment and Trade as well, or private individuals. So for example, business angels, or for example, new CEO Helsinki. Okay.
And then there was some questions about the migration, but I already informed that we cannot answer anything out of the topic today.
Okay.
And then there was someone I want to talk with, a legal advisor. So he's here. You can ask if it's related to startup or investment. But if others, then you can text us privately and we will answer your questions. This one asks about regulations for residence permit based on work.
Okay, well, based on work, so when talking about startups, it's different from a residence permit based on work. It's actually a startup permit, so it was established this year. So just to summarize it, you need to have a business plan, secure income, and permission from Business Finland to give a go-ahead. And actually one topic we can discuss is like, what is specific regulation in Finland when you already have the company? Well, when it comes to foreign direct investments, there are no general rules, but for example, the European Union's competition laws obviously apply. So that's the laws around the EU. Also, you have the Act of Foreign Corporate Acquisitions. So example, if you want to buy a business in Finland, in some very specific cases, you might need a permission to do that from the ministry. But these are, for example, energy companies, so it's not about like if you want to buy a restaurant or anything like that. Okay.
Came to Finland, but visit visa from US, but I got married. So we already informed that we're not answering questions out of the topic. So Jamal, you can contact us privately and we will answer your questions. Okay. Without business, any way to get residency for family, like donation or buy-in real estate or other way? So family, we cannot answer that question. It's out of the topic, but then you can say something about real estate.
Well, of course, you can buy real estate, but that's it in itself. Obviously, it's not sufficient to get a residence permit, unfortunately. But of course, if you are moving with a family, you have family businesses as well. So you can apply for them for the startup permit as well, in some instances at least. But again, you need to have a really good business plan. And I could say a few words generally, like if you are considering like, could I be an entrepreneur or is it too risky? Well, of course there are risks, but in the line of business there are always. So first and foremost, just before you do anything, like try to have a clear vision, like what you want to do and what your business might look like. And you are not afraid to take risks. You have to make them if you want to succeed. And unfortunately, you have to make every now and then, obviously, take sacrifices as well. And the most important thing is just like to look into the market and look like what is there on offer already and what could I actually do, or is there something like I have education and knowledge about that I could commit. And if you are not willing to start an own startup, of course you can seek employment from other startups or corporations or employers here in Finland and then apply based on employment for a residence permit. All right.
I have asked how I can start my own company. What do I need if I have already residence permit?
Okay, so if you already have a residence permit, as I mentioned before, you can apply for the startup grant from the ministry. So that's the amount of 32 euros a day for 1 year. So for 1 year, the state will provide you money in order to help you to establish a company. So only thing you need to do is be already a resident here in Finland and to have a business plan and to declare and, well, prove basically that you want to be an entrepreneur.
How much minimum investment do you suggest for applying startup permit?
Well, the investment, it's really hard to say without knowing the actual business plan. But as said, there's no like minimum amount within the law to get the startup permit. The only requirement is that it is sufficient amounts for you to live here without being a burden to the society. So basically that means that you would have to go to the state and get money at all. But if you want to get the investment, tempo financing, so if you want to really get a lot of money for your startup, then you need that about 30,000 euros at least to get the tempo financing. So after that, the state will give you 50,000 euros and you actually don't need to pay it back. It goes directly to your company and to, well, for it to succeed and expand.
What should I do to be there in Finland for business, or should I get any job invitation?
You can do both. If you get a job invitation, then it's a residence permit based on employment, so you are actually an employee of some other company. But if you want to open a business, you need to have a business plan and contact Business Finland. So if you guys just like go to Google and type Business Finland and startup, you get all the introductions like how to make the applications and what is the procedure and so on. But at this point, the business plan and the target market has to be really specific. And remember that you need to have 2 persons to get that startup permit.
The investment money which I get from the government is under a loan or helping. What do I do, or what do I will do if I didn't succeed?
Okay, well, if you get the tempo financing and the startup doesn't succeed, as said, you do not have to pay that money back. It goes, because if you get that tempo financing, it means that Business Finland believes in your concept. They believe that your company will succeed. So they are willing to take that risks. The only thing is that obviously you lose your own investment, what you paid personally, but you do not have to pay back the investment that the state pays you.
Any venture capital company where we can invest for business purpose?
Okay. Well, venture capital companies, usually they have like weekly or monthly meetings for startups. For example, one is Maria 01, where startups meet. There's this Flux meeting where startups are going and meeting investors. You have new CEO organized by the city of Helsinki, etc., etc. And there's many opportunities that you can meet like startups if you want to invest directly. But if you are only investing in a company, that's not actually owning the company, so you might not get a permit that way. So you have to be the entrepreneur.
If I have work permit, is it could affect that I don't get asylum because I have another permit?
Well, basically, if you get a certain permit, you do not need the other permit. So yes, in that sense, it does affect. Okay. Is there anything else that you want me to clarify?
Partnership business can also be eligible for startup permits.
Well, yes, partnership, yes. You need to have a partner within your company to get the startup permits in the first place. And the startup permits, the requirements are in the Business Finland, and they're also at the Migri page. But the same certain rules apply in all permits, which also, as with other permits, to get a startup permit, you need to have your passport. You cannot have been prohibited to enter Finland, be danger to the public, etc.
If you apply for nationality passport, you need a valid business permit. What if immigration office divided your Finnish passport? So this is out of the topic. We are talking about startup and investment. You can text us privately and we will get back to you.
Okay. So now if you guys need to me to give any clarification what I have been talking to, I'm happy to do that. But I suggest like checking out, just Google Business Finland and type startup permit. You get all the clear instructions from there how to proceed. And if you wish us to help you, you can contact our office and we'll obviously can contact you and provide consultation as well.
How much I have to pay as money, investment or skills? Which one works better in getting startup permits?
Yeah.
And then there was a question before, maybe this
first,
how much I have to pay as money to make a company paper? Do I get any support if I have nothing because I'm student?
Okay, well, if you are establishing a limited liability company, usually it requires 2,500 euros to register the company. So that's 2,500 euros. But usually, in order to establish a company, what the government is interested is that you have just like enough means to support for yourself at this point, and sufficient means that you can prove that I can actually start a company. So it's really dependable on case-by-case basis, and that is why the Business Finland will give a statement before you can even apply for the permit.
What you suggest, investment or skills, which one works better in getting startup permits?
Well, if you want to get a startup permit, obviously, then I would answer skills because you need to be the entrepreneur. If you invest in someone else's company, then you won't get the permit.
Hi, please, I have a contract, permanent, but problem, immigration officer, they say you don't have right to work.
Okay. Well, this is something that's outside and you can contact us about that also on later date.
What are your charges in your services?
Well, obviously, again, it's basic lawyer answering that it depends, but it really does. Like, for example, if it's usually we give like at least first half an hour. We listen to your case, like what type of it is, and we don't charge for that time. So that time is free. But if it requires like further consultation or like, for example, paperwork, or if you want us to do the business plan, obviously then we agree on a sum, and it depends how challenging it is and how much time you have already used yourself. So meaning that if we do most of the work, obviously the charges are higher, but if something has already been done, they are lower.
Any opportunity of citizenship of investment program in Finland?
I'm not quite sure what is meant by that, but if you just invest, that is unfortunately not sufficient to get a residence permit.
Hey, I have heard that the company can be started by 300 or 500 euros. Is it right?
Well, the thing is, like, you have different types of businesses in Finland. It can be a private enterprise, it can be a limited liability company or a liability company, or for example, it depends. But usually companies, and especially startups, they are limited liability companies. So that requires the 2,500 euros. So basically I'm saying, like, if you establish a company, do a limited liability company, and that means that you need to have about that 2,500 euros. Okay, let's see. Okay, not possible to invest before I'm in Finland. Opportunity security. Yes, of course, that's very true. And I wouldn't invest myself without knowing the actual model. But again, highlighting, like, investing is not enough. You actually need to have your own company, your own startup. So that's what matters. And of course, when you are here in Finland, then you can more easily check out other businesses and where to invest and what to do. Okay. Okay. An opportunity. Okay. All right. And what comes to that family law questions, contact us afterwards. We'll answer that in a separate occasion. Could you tell us your email? Omaima can provide the emails and contact details, so we're more than happy to help. And if you are even considering of opening a business or starting a business, or if you already have a business experience, of course, contact us and we can discuss further in more details with each one privately.
I can provide the link to the websites with the post, and then I can write you our emails as well. I don't know what can I do.
It's related to the family law matter, and obviously when it comes to family law and other permits, of course we can help on that as well. But the purpose of this session is to answer mostly startups. But we're happy to help on a later time on that as well. Yeah.
So you can, if it's outside of the topic, like if it's not about startups or investments, you can, the page, so you can text us privately. Then we will get back to you later. And then we will have different topics as well later.
All right. But if there's no more questions, that's pretty much it. So be brave. Remember to take risks. And do be in contact with us on a later date as well. And thank you very much for your good questions, and we'll be in touch on a later date then.
Canvas and startups, Mustafa.
Sorry?
He was just asking about the topic.
Okay. All right. So
thank you
very much.